welcome Kirsten Wolf.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Well, I guess I have to begin with where Brian left off, which is engagement or scale.
Oh, gosh.
What do clients want, engagement or scale? And how has that changed?
I think it depends on the client. I think it depends on the specific business, challenge.
Is there a trend?
There probably is a trend toward engagement versus scale. There used to be a lot more conversation around, reach or frequency. I think now it's a lot more about answering a business challenge and creating experiences. So,
answering a business challenge and creating experiences. So, tell me how, if I'm an audio brand and I come to you and your challenge for your clients is to answer that business challenge and create experiences, what's the way to pitch you for that? What's the way to communicate with you to address the need that you have?
Well, I feel like we have a lot more. Back in the day, it used to be there was the buy side and the sell side, and there was all this conversation around price, and I wanted to get the lowest price, and you wanted to get the highest price, and now it's a lot more about collaboration, and just I feel like we talk. I mean, there are a couple of people in this room that I deal with on a fairly regular basis. We talk a lot about the business challenge and the offering, and how to match those things effectively to answer the business challenge.
Tell me how, just kind of globally, you see the audio, Starcom sees the audio space today.
Well, we see it, as you sort of alluded to in my intro, where we take a very sort of holistic approach, platform agnostic, audio neutral, whatever you want to call it. Channel doesn't lead the conversation when we start talking about audio.
The silo doesn't lead the conversation.
Nope.
Okay,
No,
so
not
then
at all.
what does?
Individual clients come to us with very specific challenges, and we look at the audio space very holistically and come back with what we think will work. I can give you some examples.
Love that.
So we were working with a specialty retailer that was doing in-store events in 15 different markets, I think. And on the front end of the campaign, it was very much about selling tickets and getting people to buy tickets to these events. On the back end of the campaign, they had a very good mechanism in place for activating these events in the local markets, but they really wanted to partner with some local talent, bring that local talent to those events, add some music, have them interact with the consumers when they came into the store for those events. So on the front end of the campaign, it was very much about digital audio. Again, we were selling tickets. In the year 2014, you couldn't go online and buy a ticket. You had to call. So it was all about, getting the listener to engage. Tap to call options all of a sudden became very attractive. But then on the back end, it was all about that traditional AM/FM, that local talent that connects with that person in the local market who's going to come to the event and really want to engage with that local personality that they're familiar with in the store.
Let's talk about that. How do you see the strength? Let's take terrestrial radio as one example. How do you see the strengths of the various, channels as you make your decisions?
Well, I think there's been some discussion in the room today. I think it's really interesting about sort of streaming and terrestrial, traditional AM/FM, being enemies. And certainly, we are very much about sort of following the listener. The fact of the matter is, AM/FM still has tremendous reach. People are listening less. They have a lot of choices. They're going other places. Nobody has the ground game, though, of a local AM/FM station. They've got those personalities that connect with people in the local market. They've got this terrific ground game. Podcasting has, figured out that sort of personality connection, but nobody has the ground game like local AM/FM. So,
would you define what you mean by ground game?
The ability to go out into the marketplace, the ability for those local personalities to really connect with listeners in their local marketplace. I don't call into radio shows. There are personalities that I like. I'm not going to follow them around town. But, I make it a point to go to listener events occasionally to see those people who love those personalities, who are really attached to them, who will follow them to events, who are really, really connected to them. And I think that, still remains really relevant and powerful.
What are the differences in how you buy or would like to buy different channels of audio?
Well, I think it comes back to the business challenge, if I'm understanding the question correctly. To give you another example, we have a client that is a national new home builder, and they're national, but they're active in maybe 2 handfuls of markets. They have very, very narrow trade areas, and so for them, a zip radius targeted audio is really perfect. I gave you the example of our, retail client that, really needed to play in both spaces, digital and more traditional. We're looking at a lot of podcasting right now because we've just partnered with a small indie movie studio. Movie studios are really passionate about their films. They're very niche targeted films, and that, the potential fit with very sort of niche and targeted content and podcasting seems to be a good fit. So just depends on the client and what the challenge is.
Those are great examples. Let's talk about the audio, the sellers for audio that approach you. How do they get it wrong when they pitch you?
Oh boy. I'll turn that question around a little bit and just say that I think the ones that are most valuable to me, I grew up in traditional, local TV and radio, and I've slowly made this evolution to this more holistic approach to audio and video. But I just value that collaboration so much more. The ones that have functioned for me sort of as teachers, and help me not only understand their offering, what's great about their offering, what's better about their offering than anybody else's, what their longer term vision for their offerings, might be, how they see the whole audio landscape. I mean, those who have really understood their roles not so much as sellers, but also sort of as educators, and have collaborated, with me and my agency and our clients to really, unlock sort of the power and the potential of audio.
How important is it that these sellers have that knowledge across various platforms, even if it's in the audio space?
Well, I mean, not everybody has to know everything about everything. I mean, everybody, there's just a lot more collaboration and conversation, I think, and those that are the most collaborative and are willing to really sit down and talk about a business challenge and share their points of view, not only on their own offerings, but perhaps others in a positive way, are, it's become much more important than just that negotiation that I want a low price and you want a high price and we're going to, see who wins this battle. It's much more.
Okay. One of the things you told me when we talked previously is that there's a certain way that you're approached that you don't appreciate. Do you want to talk about that?
I wasn't going to go there.
I have a good memory.
I do occasionally get approached. It's a little bit of a burr under my saddle, but I do get approached occasionally because people know that that I grew up in a traditional space, and I'll get the is someone from the digital team going to be in this meeting? Which to me, perhaps I'm hearing this wrong, but it sounds to me like, is someone smarter than you going to be in the room when I come to share with you my offering? And that tends to be a little bit off-putting. That said, I will say, it's hard for us on our side to really make sense of the audio landscape as it continues to evolve in the constant fashion in which it does evolve. I think it's as hard, or maybe even harder on the sell side, when you're dealing with a total lack of standardization in the way agencies approach audio, the way agencies are structured. I mean, it's a tough slog, I think, on the sell side. So I give sellers that.
It's an evolving situation for sure. How do you compare the pros and cons of audio to other media options?
That's a tough question. I think when the media landscape was a little simpler, you had a lot of that sort of, well, I need reach, so I'm going to use, TV or out of home, or I need frequency, so I'm going to add radio to this mix. In the media landscape the way it is now, I honestly think that it really does come back to that business challenge and creating experiences and really just trying to figure out, what's the challenge and how to deliver on it. I think it's less about that, TV or radio,
Channel.
radio or TV. Yeah.
But for audio specifically, I mean, just consider audio in isolation then. How do you assess what audio is really good at and what audio isn't so good at for you and your clients' challenges?
What audio as a whole is good at? I guess it really just comes back to, what do you need and what are you trying to accomplish and how can I, which specific channel can I deploy that's going to answer, that challenge.
Where do the ideas come from? Do they come from the clients, from you, from the sellers? Where do the ideas typically come from?
That's the great thing. I think they come from everywhere. I would like to say, gosh, we're the smartest people on earth. We come up with all these brilliant ideas. But I think as many ideas are kind of brought to us, I think it comes back to the collaboration, being willing to have those conversations with sellers about what's your offering and here's what my client's doing. And, they're constantly challenged with this thing. Well, we're developing this thing and maybe that could be a fit. I think they come from all over. They do come from clients sometimes. But I think we're presented with some really groundbreaking stuff by sellers as much as we create the idea ourselves.
If I'm an audio seller, what's more important, that I come to you with the lowest cost per point or that I come to you with a compelling idea that addresses your client's needs?
Well, we are a big global agency and, we are always going to drive on price. But I think anymore, I think the scales are tipping. I do. I really do think the scales are tipping. I think it becomes less about price and more about, the smart impression or the smart idea, the big experience.
By smart impression, you don't necessarily mean one powered by metrics. You mean an impression that has an idea wrapped around it that fits the challenge of the
that creates a bigger experience.
Okay.
Exactly.
Let's talk about measurement a little bit. Unified measurement, of course, is the idea that one platform measures everything. For example, in Nielsen.
Yeah.
How important is that?
Well, I think it certainly would make, the buy and sell sides an awful lot easier. It would be great for transparency. I'm not so sure what a unified measurement would look like. Frankly, I'm not a researcher. There are probably people that are much smarter than me that, maybe have a better idea of how that could come together. I have a very difficult time myself visualizing how the one-to-many and the one-to-one and the download and all those things come together in some sort of representative unified measurement. I mean, I'll tell you that we don't let the fact that a particular platform or offering doesn't conform to some sort of standardized measurement stop us from putting a client's message in a place where we think that it belongs. We're very transparent with our clients. We let them know what does and doesn't exist, in terms of measurement, across platforms and how we're quantifying audience. So we don't necessarily, let that deter us from going to the places that are right. I think moving forward, obviously we want to move toward buying audiences versus buying demos, and we want our purchases to be more and more data informed. So I think that will probably guide, how metrics.
But that doesn't necessarily imply unification, does it?
No, it doesn't. And it's hard, but there are ways to sort of make it work without having unified measurement. It's tough. People were used to having a unified measurement for a very long time, and now you have to be a little bit more creative.
One of the things you said to me before is that, it may not be that it's so important, but it is comfortable.
It is comfortable. And, I think everyone who buys or sells would say it's an awful lot easier as well. You spend a lot of time having conversation about, people's hesitancy. It depends on their level of risk aversion, I guess. Their hesitancy to dive into something that they can't exactly quantify comfortably. So
a lot of people in the traditional radio space argue that it's essential that this happen. Do you feel it's in any way essential?
I think we would love to have it in the interest of ease of transaction and transparency. It is something that we all feel would be a great thing. I just don't know that, in the short term, the middle term, if it's something that we're certainly not going to wait around for it and let opportunities pass us by just because we don't have this unified measurement.
Right. Where does unified measurement kind of land in the priorities? If you've got on that list ideas and fulfilling the client needs, I'm just wondering how important it is.
I wouldn't put it at, the top of my, we've figured out ways around it. And like I said, we're transparent with our clients about how we come to the conclusions we come to, and what data is behind that and what isn't. So, I think we will find ways to work around it until it's there.
What's the most important thing you need from sellers in the audio space that you may not get enough? If you had a wish list and you could speak to them directly, like now, what would that be?
Well, right now, I think a conversation that we could be having centers around audio creative specifically, and how, it's not a new conversation. I think people have been talking for years about creating, advertising for the audio space that's really breakthrough. I mean, I remember the days when advertisers would lift a sound bed out of a TV spot and call that a radio spot. I don't think that happens as much anymore. But, as platforms diversify, and, I think we really could have a lot more conversation about the actual audio creative and how that gets customized for different platforms, what works best in different platforms, different targeting capabilities that bring creative possibilities to the picture. I think we could be having a bigger conversation about how to sort of maybe utilize audio creative, be smarter and more thoughtful about it in order to really sort of unlock the power and the potential of audio.
You may not have an answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway.
Okay.
Is there a particular illustration you could give of particularly compelling audio creative versus particularly non-compelling? Can you draw that contrast?
I heard one yesterday. I was driving to work, and I had the radio on, and I was only a couple blocks from the office, so I had kind of leaned back. I was in my head. I was thinking about what I needed to do when I got to the office. I was vaguely aware that there was a commercial break that was happening, and it was the last commercial in the pod. And at the end of the spot, the voiceover was, "And now we're going to let you listen to this spot, or this song that you've been dying to hear." And it went right into the music. And I was like, I had never heard that. I mean, maybe that execution's been around forever. I had never heard it, but it brought me right back in. I had completely leaned back. Like I said, I was in my head thinking about what I needed to do when I got into the office, but it brought me right back in. I always have to wonder, is that because I'm in the business and I look at these things differently? Or did it really successfully sort of engage me again? Sadly, I can't remember the advertiser. Mary Lou would remember. But
you need more impressions.
Yeah.
What about the flip side? What are there flavors of audio creative where you say, this isn't... this is what I hope we evolve away from?
Yeah, I do hear a lot of bland audio creative, and I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. I think we have to think about that a little bit more, not just about the creative itself, but then how it works across platforms, and that maybe within one big idea, one business challenge, one campaign, you could be utilizing different platforms, but totally different creative. To deliver kind of the same message, based on the platform.
What you're talking about is audio is a component of a larger piece, and it's executed in different ways on other platforms, and the audio is one piece of that puzzle. It's like a puzzle, and audio is one piece of the puzzle. Yeah. It's not the whole puzzle.
Yeah.
Any questions for Kirsten Wolf? This is a great opportunity. Get your agency questions answered here.
So I work for a radio show. It's a nationally syndicated show.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I work for a radio show that's a nationally syndicated show.
Okay.
Where our ads are sold through a radio network.
Uh-huh.
So we seem to have trouble allowing the content creators, our hosts, our producers, to assist with curating, or maybe not curating, but assist the agencies into understanding that we've got a great opportunity for them. So basically working it backwards. is there any solution for us in that area? So, you know, it seems like well, we'll come up with a content idea. And it's like, oh, this would be perfect for, I don't know, a pet advertiser. So, and it just seems to go nowhere. And the way it seems to work at the beginning of the year is we get hey, can you give us a list of the 20 promotions you're going to do this year? And it's really tough to sit there in January and go, okay, we're going to do every one of these things when the content is changing. You know, social media is driving what we do many times and what's pop culture and content. But we come up with a fun bid or an idea that may have something to do with a movie or, you know, something that's changing, and we can't seem to drive it back up the hill, you know? I don't know if there's a solution for that, but that's something that we seem to deal with.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a solution to that either. I mean, it really is going to depend on how open, you know, individual agencies are to hearing your pitch at the point at which it's most crucial, when the plan is being developed, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Hard to answer.
You're talking about how you're educating yourself and you're bringing yourself into the new age and teaching yourself everything that's going on the digital side, audio holistically, you're looking at it. Are you seeing, it's a two-part question, are you seeing the digital team within your agency doing that same thing, educating traditional media, traditional audio and video, and where do you see the buying structure going as you go forward?
For us, yes, to your first question, the digital team is, you know, the same is happening in the reverse. And it really, for us at this point, it's kind of a, you know, we work on an individual client basis and who leads, kind of. It depends on what the experience is. If, let's say, display or video is leading the experience, it might be that, but audio is a component, maybe the more team would handle that. If audio leads the experience, most likely, you know, my team would handle that. But we're really collaborative. There's a lot of conversation about, okay, well, you know, here's what we're working with. You could handle it, I could handle it. What makes the most sense? So that's really how it's working for us.
Kirsten Wolf, Starcom Worldwide, thank you so much. Thank you so much.